Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the December 18th meeting of the Town Subcommittee of the Expenditure and Revenues Study Committee in the town of Brookline. I'm Jesse. I want to welcome Janet and John from the committee. So we do have a quorum, and the first item of business is to review the minutes that are in the agenda. Those thanks to John Van Scoyac for using the AI transcript summary to produce them. I looked at them and edited them a second time, sent them back to him. He approved them. So is there any discussion about the minutes from the December 11th meeting? Hearing no discussion, is there a motion to accept the minutes?
Moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Seconded by John. So how do you vote, Janet?
To approve, I vote aye, yes.
Aye, John?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Chair votes yes, so the minutes are approved unanimously. Is it possible to get one of the two of you to volunteer to be the note taker for this meeting today?
John Van Scoyac is on his way in.
Yep, I just saw that pop up. I admitted him in. Okay, so I'll rotate back again and ask if there's someone who's willing to take the role of the minute taker for today. I'm happy to look at it after you do it if you'd like, but since I'm running the meeting.
I'm happy to do it again. I take
All right,
notes
Janet,
as we
thank
go
you.
anyway.
Should be pretty straightforward today. I'm not anticipating any super con. Good morning, John. Thank you for joining.
Hey, good morning. By the way,
Yes.
I'd also be happy to do it, but I don't want to preempt Janet by any means.
Oh no, John, if you want, I've had my share if you're available.
Yeah, I've only done it once, so why don't I take it again?
Then
Thank
we
you, John.
elect you as the minute taker. Just be
Thank you,
careful,
John.
because once you say yes, you're sort of stuck forever.
All right, duly recognized. Thank you, John. Thank you, John V. Yes, so
Happy to do it.
so Nicole will make sure you get the AI transcript and you can take it from there.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, the next item of business, I don't have the agenda sitting in front of me, but in any case, we need to decide on our next meeting. We're not going to be meeting either in the next 2 Thursdays due to the holidays. Question is, do we, as a group, feel that January 8th will be too soon to meet, or do we want to meet on the 8th? If not, I would propose that we meet on January 15th. I'm okay either way. It depends on, I guess, to a certain extent, how much work the volunteer members of the committee feel they'll be able to do, along with me, volunteering, before the 8th. So we have a report that's fleshed out further than what I'm going to show today. If we think we need a little more time, then, I'm totally fine with a suggestion to make it the 15th of January. So any discussion on that?
I would suggest the 8th, which we can always cancel, because if we wait to the 15th, we're going to run out of month. And personally, I have a plan for what I would like to work on, whether it's sort of in my head, I'm writing how we got where we are. So it goes through a lot of the definitional stuff and some of the information I'm getting from Charlie, who's been wonderful. Thank you, Charlie. So I'm willing to take a stab at that. I'm looking at the next 2 weeks as, oh, goody, nobody's around to bother me. I can actually get some work done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, absolutely. So any other comments before we just agree by assent to go with the 8th? Okay, so hearing no other strong feelings, let's so Nicole could take, you'll know that we're going to have it on the 8th. I'll make sure to get an agenda in time. So our next meeting of the town subcommittee will be on January 8th, 2026 at 9 a.m. Thank you, team, for that. Okay, the next item is to look at the report that we have. I did send out an email. Again, I apologize. I apologized before the recording went on. I apologize now again for only really being able to find time for this last night at like 10 o'clock and or at 9 o'clock, I'm working for an hour or two on it, rather than doing it earlier and having it ready and in the meeting packet. I suppose, I guess I'll share my screen and pop it up there. The key things that happened since last week on it were, I edited the executive summary a bunch. I moved Janet's data about override structural deficits and debt exclusion to a more logical location within the document. I took all 33 slides that had been presented to the select board the prior week and got them into a format in which I could use AI to summarize all of them and suck out some of the tables. Some of that data ended up in the document. You'll see it. I then took the rest of the slides that had been prepared by Melissa and Charlie and Lincoln, I suppose, under Chaz's direction, and screenshot the ones that the AI tool wouldn't pull out, so that we had them in a separate document. But then yesterday, I actually brought them all over, except for one or two, which either I don't really understand or felt they weren't necessary to tell the story. Although I'm happy to be overruled on that. And I added them all to the same document. And then, so we have everything in one place, and I created an appendix that has an appendix with a table of contents for all the other information that we got out of those 33 slides. I then cleaned up the original document. John Van Scoyoc had sent a couple of questions, which I'd like to, I put into the document as well. He then discussed last week the Collins report on some property tax information, levy information. At the same time, John Doggett was able to uncover, maybe from the budget book, I guess, a couple of years worth of both single family, multifamily, and condo and rental property tax information going back to last 5 or 6 years. So I added a link to that in the document as well. So the plan, I think, for now would be to share this document, annotate it as we're going through in terms of if there are sections, like Janet said, she was thinking of working on a section. If there are other sections people want to work on, we'll just make it into a shared document with tracking on and share it amongst the committee, and then look to get together in smaller groups before the 8th if there are things to update and talk about, 1 or 2 people at a time. And then and then by the 8th, have another document, to look over. If it's ready in time before the 8th, I will send it to Nicole in some format so that it's available as part of the meeting packet. And that way other people in the town who are interested in looking at where we are with the report, in addition to Sadaf from schools and Sergio from futures, will be able to take a look at that as well. I still haven't really included anything about the schools because we're still awaiting some information from the school department. It is on the agenda for this evening, but there is no data available. It could just be another announcement that they'll need more time. And even if it is the actual data that we're looking for, it'll take a little while to process that over the next week or 2 or 3 anyway. And that's also something for Sadaf's committee to work on. So there may be a couple of items in here that we'll mention, which were predictions or forecasts from Jazz's team about what the school ask could be from a structural deficit and potential override amount, but we'll obviously leave placeholders for those to get updated as we get better information.
So Jesse, just for clarification, are we as a subcommittee, I thought, had to produce a report for the full committee, and that's what I thought we were working on, which means we're not referring to the schools. And then when they do their report, we could just merge them together into a final report.
That yeah, I actually met with Sadaf and Sergio 2 days back or so, and that's exactly what we decided might make best for us to go and begin. For me, for example, as a school committee member, right, and starting to write school stuff into here, would actually be stepping into the school subcommittee work. So we're letting them take their direction. At some point, Sadaf was telling me she thinks she'll be able to get hers, which is, I think more super critical than the futures one, because the futures one is not going to be able to generate, you know, revenues or even with the best ideas in the next, you know, 5 years, maybe 10 years out. And so the futures one will be interesting and nice to have and show that we've thought this through in terms of what future opportunities exist for Brookline from a, you know, say cost reduction, but probably even more revenue enhancement side. But ultimately, in terms of reaching out to the voters this, you know, this time, Sadaf was saying even she's thinking not even by February would they have their report ready, maybe early March. And so I didn't want to wait anyway. I think we have the town information, Janet. Let's get this as far along as possible and let it go through iterations of us. And then when they have their school thing, you know, the idea would be to fully merge them together into one document. Yeah. And, you know, as a report of the Expenditure and Revenues Study Committee, it'll be one document. Okay.
And we'll have the tax data in our part since it comes from the town side.
That's right. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, whatsoever. Yeah, that's totally fine. If there are no other comments, let me just bring up the document here. Let's see, is that last time you went goofy on me? Is that showing the calendar or is that showing the document?
Showing the document.
Okay, great. Okay, is it big enough to see?
Bit small.
It's small.
I can read it.
How about now?
That's fine.
Better.
That's all you said.
But now-
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay, so I did okay. So anyway, so the executive side, I took out all there were things in there that talked about the charges that the ERSE was given John D. I just took them out because there's no relationship between them. No, we're not printing in here the actual charge from the website, so I just figured we'll just move through topic by topic. So a paragraph about when ERSE was created, and a paragraph about when the decision was made to divide it to 3 subcommittees. The town subcommittee, which is us, the 5 of us, who we are, and what the 3 main suggestions or you know, ideas about what we're supposed to do is collect information about our town's financial health, explain the set of challenges that we face as we look towards the next year's budget, and make a set of recommendations to the whole committee for the next steps. And a significant resource, thank you section here on the town's fiscal health and the budget is in the town administrator's office. So I have Chaz's correct information, Melissa's, Charlie Young's. I moved it from guru to assistant town administrator for finance, and town finance director Lincoln, and I took the double N off the back of his name. So that is, you know, a great amount of thanks for all this, all the work they continue to do with us. From the town side, there was I have a couple of 1, 2, 3, I think 5, yeah, 5 headlines down here in the executive summary. Some need some help still, some 2 I put in. So one is that in the deck that that Chaz and teams showed the select board, the structural budget gap, or we can change budget gap to deficit, it's fine. Either one is about $3 million, driven by rising fixed costs, health insurance, pensions, salary obligations, and the exhaustion of one-time funds. And I added in what I saw off one of the other slides is that the ARPA funding is projected to end in the middle of the next fiscal year, December 26th. So this
Just a question, Jesse, on the terminology here. Structured deficit, we've got definitions. So I'm just wondering whether it's really projected deficit, is it not? I'm just wondering whether we should use that term as a little bit more clear. Because really, as far as structural deficit is a projection. It's not, we as we all know, we balance the budget every year. So we've got a balanced budget. So we don't have a deficit now, but we are projecting one for next year and the following years.
I
That's
would
fine.
just say that it shows a projected deficit and leave out the structural part here.
Okay.
Structural is why it keeps coming back. But right now it's a projected deficit for 2027.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'll leave the bold and non-bold. We can clean that up later. It's not important.
Yep.
All right, thank you. That's good. Yeah, thank you, JD, for that one. That's a good catch. All right, absent corrective action, the town faces either service reductions or staffing cuts totaling about, I couldn't find that number off the top of my head last night, so there is some number. It's probably in a slide. If Chaz or Melissa or somebody has it, that's great. At some point in here, I think somewhere else I listed the 18, I mean, where we talk about the impacts of if we don't have an override, the 18 FTE in the town, but there may be also additional FTE in the school, so that'll be added later. But this number needs to probably be put in. And the one thing also I did not find, not that it's not there, but I just didn't have time to wade through all the documents on the website where Nicole had placed everything. Now, thank you for still doing that. It's very, very helpful. There's a lot to go through. Was which significant core services will be curtailed? There is a slide in which I think Chaz showed us, the one that had farmers market, but there were other things in there that would disappear. And I don't think it has to be here, but somewhere in our document, I think we want an accurate list of what town services will be significantly either curtailed, or another one was transportation for seniors, whether that will be free or whether it will have to be or subsidized or full cost. I mean, whatever it'll have to be. You know, we're going to have to, there'll be dollars that need to be stretched past the breaking point. So some things will have to fall, and we should definitely be open, transparent, and discuss what those are. So somewhere in here, they're not here yet, but they just, I'm making a mental note for us to make sure that they're in here. And if either, you know, of any of the other members of our subcommittee here have those in, once tracking's on in the document here, and I'll stick it somewhere where we can do that. Just feel free to do it. Okay.
Jesse, I've got a question.
Yes.
Would you characterize, or would we characterize this proposal as being a keep the lights on versus keep the lights on and do 5 other nice new things? If you, I'm just, you know, just contrasting there. I'm unclear, and if it's the former, then I think we should probably focus on that. If it's the latter, then we also need to, you know, say, yes, we're keeping the lights on is this, and the additional programs are as follows.
I didn't
Yeah,
see
Chaz
any.
has his hands up. You want to answer part of that? Do you have a comment on that one, Chaz, or something else? You're still on mute. Oh, there you are. Good morning.
Sure. So I can answer that, and then I just wanted to add one other thing in terms of what you were discussing there, Jesse, in terms of potential cuts and impacts to operations. This is very much the current proposal that was put in front of the select board is very much a keep the lights on. I think an area where there's going to need to be some explanation and sort of there's play in the joints is this, you know, particularly around some of the stuff that Janet is looking into, programs that have been passed by town meeting but not funded. So in that regard, you know, there's money in here to restore or to fully operationalize the tree protection bylaw. Now, is that new? Yes, technically that's new. But it is, we're obligated to do it. So it's something where the community has made clear through town meeting that they want to do this. In order to make that happen, we need 2 additional people. In order to get 2 additional people, we need X amount of dollars. So in some ways, yes, that's not strictly speaking, keep the lights on, because it's something we don't have now, but it is something that we are being required to do. And in order to do it right, we need to be able to have these amount of resources behind it. But by and large, most of this is a keep the lights on operation, right? Just to keep things going as they are now is $3 million. And then the other big looming factor here is the cost of fire operations, right? It's the fire overtime, taking that out of regular reserve fund transfers and putting that into the full-time budget and paying for the contract, particularly in FY28. And that's where I think, Jesse, just a flag for you, absent corrective action, you know, you'll have this issue in FY27, but you will also have cuts in FY28 when the fire contract comes online. So I do think as we, you know, look at that, it's not just, you know, the universe of cuts that we've been talking about is just year 1. Year 2, there would be an additional substantive cut, probably a significant number of FTEs again, just to be able to pay for that fire contract. So we want to be clear, you know, I want to flag that for the group, just to be clear that the cuts will not be made over 1 year. We'll see 2, potentially even 3 years of impact.
And the big places that I recall from the list that Chaz provided and was in the presentation to select board are fire, police, and public works. I mean, those are the three big things in the budget. Those are about the only places you can make cuts that would reach this level. I mean, 2.9 million is more than the individual budgets of the smaller departments. And
Correct.
yeah, those are things that matter to the voters. And I think it's important to flag that the trade-offs are going to be very deep and very dire.
Yeah, so I'm saying that, I mean, yeah, so these are FTE cuts. There's another whole area of program cuts. So, I mean, that's where I see things like tree preservation bylaw support needs to
So
go. And
I,
and other things town meeting. I mean, if you have a list, Janet, then you should probably plan to get that list together. Potentially with what the cost is, because that would be a cost avoidance by not doing them. And we should get that in here in a table somewhere where the people reading it will be able to see precisely what we're proposing has to be jettisoned in order for us to stay afloat.
yeah, the list is one of Chaz's
Okay,
slides.
yeah, I said again, we got to
Yeah.
find it somewhere where Chess can send it. I mean, he doesn't email it back to us, but it's somewhere in all the meeting materials that are in the list. So we gotta try to find that. Okay, great. All right, look, if we can get from top to bottom through the document in the next like half hour, just so that people understand what's in here, and then we can sort of divvy it up, that would be amazing. Because of the schools not having its amount, I know there's a $13.5 million thing in the document that the select board saw, but the operating override right now, we don't really know what the total is going to be, whether that's 25 million, whether it's 35 million, we don't know. So I didn't want to put any number in here, especially if it goes out to the in the meeting minutes for the, in the meeting packet for January 8th, and suddenly it's there as a draft, and like it gets picked up by other folks. We don't know the number yet, so I didn't want to put a number in there, but it would cover the structural issue and restore, preserve current level, and maybe avert near-time cuts. And we'll have, you know, some allocation plan for the first year. I'm not sure section 7 is still the right place. We'll have to check it. But essentially, there was the plan that Chaz discussed last week having to do with the override stabilization fund, meaning that funds would from the override would be some of it would be reserved for outgoing years 28, 29. If I understand what we said last time, he's nodding, so that's good. I remembered it correctly. This is good. I could join town administration, and then and then obviously the larger amount to get us out of the hole we're in right now. There was a slide that talked, and we had talked about this in one of our earlier meetings before the select board meeting at the golf course about the 350,000. That was an estimate for alternative revenue options, parking fee increases, receipts, non-recurring funds, but it's too small to close any gap at being just $1/3 million. And then our final summary statement here, again, this will all get cleaned up, but basically we're recommending the select board present an override question, the amount, purpose, and first year amount, and an emphasis on transparency about how, where all the money is going to be going, how much is going to be saved for outgoing years, and our long-term stewardship of the financials. Okay. In the introduction, again, a little piece about the purpose and scope of the ERSC. Again, this may not be required because we have it in the executive summary, but then again, within the meat of the report, I didn't see any big issue with keeping it in there. Our methodology that we're looking at on the school side, probably very similar. Look at the long range forecast of budgets, the cost projections, the revenue sources, identify the pressures, separate recurring and non-recurring costs. I'm not sure we have that like tabled really well yet. There are some. The menu of cuts to model the impact of no override or reduced funding, that isn't really done yet. There is a sample that's in there somewhere. I have it in the appendix. And then look at other revenue alternatives, benchmark our finances against other municipalities. There's some of that in here so far, more that can be added, and potentially 3 scenarios. If the override passes, and different parts of it, if the override fails, and then reallocation without any new revenue. Is that necessary reallocation without any new revenue? I think, isn't that similar to just if the override fails?
That's if it fails, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we don't, I think maybe override passes fully and partially would be the two options, Janet, right? And then this little third one, I don't think it's required. I don't,
Depends on how it's presented. It's usually presented or historically been presented as yes or no. I don't know if there'd be a tiered one here. Those are all parts that we haven't really looked at yet, how to structure the override. And I'm thinking maybe Chaz, you're going to have that for us later today for the full committee.
okay,
But
but I'm saying, is this reallocation without new revenue, Janet, even relevant in the sentence? I mean,
no, that can go.
yeah, I think that's what I was gonna say. So it's override passes, and then I think in here, just potential scenarios or something. One is the override passes fully, for now, fully or partially. And then I'll clean this up. And then the override fails. That's sort of the three possibilities. This again, we could say projected again here. I like what okay, so the deficit is created. This is from your this is what you wrote, Janet, before. I cleaned up a little bit. I edited it very, 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 very lightly.
Do whatever. I have no.
Yeah. So I'm saying when you read through it, you'll see this was the document that you had, the information you did. Then from the then I copied this out of the one of the slides that was in the deck to the select board. And again, it could all be cleaned up, etc. But I'm saying it's basically showing the next 5 years what our projected revenues are. I checked it twice and I typed the numbers incorrectly, Chaz, but I'll check it again to make sure I didn't like mess up a number somewhere. And then this shows, you know, a structural gap, which is basically revenues minus expenditures of being negative each of the years. Shows a big. We probably should at some point explain why it's going up and then going down again. You know, it hits this 42 million in 29, and then it comes down again. We may understand that, but I think a note or something, someone will pick up on that. Or if we plot it out and they see it going that, we probably need an explanation of why that is.
Pension.
Excuse me? Pension,
one word, pension.
Oh, okay. So that's the pension. So yeah, so I will, I'm gonna leave a note in here. That's the finishing the payoff. Is that what happens?
Yeah. Although again, right, you know, what this assumes then is that money becomes available, and the reality is it won't be, because the select board's policy, which is smart, is that, well, we have another large unfunded liability, which is OPEBs. So, you know, retiree healthcare and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's where the lion's share of that money will be going.
So
this projection, you know, we can talk a little bit about, but you know, just so people understand, that money is, with the select board's position on this, is that money is spoken for. So this projection doesn't make that assumption, but the select board has made that assumption.
Chaz, may I just?
Do you mean the 7 million between the 42 and the 35?
Yeah, I'm sorry, and yeah.
Then John, go ahead. I just wanted to understand, when you say that it's spoken for, the 42 to 35 means that there's $7 million that's like sort of available, but you're saying that's spoken for.
Almost certainly, yeah. But
Okay.
again, I can't bind a future select board, right? So
Okay.
And nor can I. But I wanted to just ask Chaz for his view on this. I haven't looked at the numbers lately, but my recollection from looking at them in the past is that we created kind of an accelerated sprint to the finish line with the pension pay down.
Yes.
But at the level of the final year of the pension pay down, how does that compare to what we anticipate will be the first year of the OPEB pay down?
So it's still very hypothetical. You know, one of the big things, the biggest assumption that we are making is a 6.8% return on our investments in the pension fund.
Yeah.
And as you get closer to full, you know, satisfying that outstanding obligation, remember, there are ongoing obligations with the pension too. It's not like we hit FY 2030 and it drops to zero. It drops to, okay, and you still have to fund the pension every year to make sure that you're staying current with
Right.
You know, that assumption, you know, and we've been trying over the years to bring it down so that we are not over optimistic in how the market treats us. but is very much subject to market pressure. So it will be difficult for me to say at this point in FY30 where we're going to be and how much accordingly we would then be shifting into OPEBs. It would be, you know, the current policy of the board is to prioritize retiring our unfunded liabilities. But I don't know in practice what that's going to mean in FY30. We project a slight, it goes up, it goes up. We continue to try and put as much money into it as we can because we don't want to be saying to the public and everyone else, we're relying on unrealistic market projections in order to get us to an FY30 payout.
Yeah.
And so it's tough for me to kind of speculate. All right, in FY30, the number is going to be X. We're going to assume this rate of return, and so we're going to put of the money we have available. I don't know what the independent variable is, how much money is available, and I don't know what the dependent variable is of that. How much are we going to put into OPEBs? So
Yeah.
sorry to not have a more concrete answer, but there's too much unknown, particularly when it comes to how the market is going to do. I mean, and again, we're starting to see those warning signs in terms of job numbers and so forth, that it looks like the market, irrational as it has been for some time, eventually the music is going to stop there. So,
Yeah,
Well, I'm sorry, Janet, may I just add one more thought here? It always surprises me in not a good way at how stubborn the unfunded liability is. And I'm looking at the most recent report, which is just 2024. And, it's nice to see that we've been eating away at the unfunded liability over the past 5 years or so. But bottom line is we're now back to a level of funding of totally funded liability that is the same as it was in like 2000. I mean, in the year 2000, we approached 80% funding, and then it went into decline, and then in the last 5 years or so, it's been creeping back up. We're still at 80% as of 2024. So how confident are we that we're going to reach 100% pay down of this unfunded liability?
I'm more confident than we were in 2000. I think that
Okay.
the
That's
big
good enough
difference
for me.
the two big differences here is, one, the state has put its foot down and said you can't do this anymore. You've got to be fully funded by 2040, like it or not. And the other is we just have strong controls in place.
Yeah.
It was much harder in 2000 to make the argument that the most important thing was to deal with these unfunded liabilities because we were still struggling to get over the effects of Prop 2.5. So we were doing whatever we could in order to keep the lights on, and we weren't doing as well as maybe other communities were in terms of satisfying those obligations. You got to remember too that in between 2000 and now, there have been 3 major market recessions. The dot-com bubble burst in 2000. You had the Great Recession in 2008, and then you had the COVID blip in 2020 and 21. And so those all had impacts as well. So am I 100% confident? No. There's too much unknown to be overly confident. But I'm more confident than it would have been 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in a recommendation, once we've satisfied state law, that we suggest that the select board re-examine its policies, because if the electorate doesn't tolerate continued overrides, there might be, can we take some of this, not forever, but just to sort of normalize ourselves and get over the hump, because it's been eating up so much. I don't know that it's, yes, we should do it. I just think it's a policy that the select board would have the ability to look at again, which it can't now because the state law says you have to do it by. It's just a thought for what we put into our final report.
You're suggesting we put in some recommendation about that? That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll make a note, make a mental note to yourself about that, or we'll put it down when we get a little further down. Thank you. Okay, the big drivers of the deficit, fixed cost growth, decline or exhaustion of one-time and non-recurring funds. Again, I expanded these acronyms because we throw them around, but a lot of people have no idea what they are. The stabilization fund drawdowns, I left myself a note here, Chaz, about more details needed of when we say that we're exhausting our non-recurring funds. If we had some stabilization funds, which one, in case people from the public ask us, which stabilization funds? I know there's a fund chart that's down in the appendix now, but we might want to draw attention at least to some specifics here about what are the implications of that drawdowns, which funds are exhausting, where did the money come from them, you know, initially, why aren't we still funding them? Those, or maybe we don't want all these stabilization funds, we want less of them. So that whole idea. And the other one is and free cash. Again, it's not free, it's just a certain percentage that we have to keep, so we don't have it to spend. And that masked recurring shortfalls, yes, okay. And limited growth in core revenue that we already saw cannot match the pace of the permanent costs, okay. Fixed costs are outpacing the levy growth, threatening service levels. On debt exclusion, Janet, you had written again a piece, I put it in here. These, of course, explain that this is not an override. This is really to cover like capital projects. We're asking for an override and not a debt exclusion. Okay. I want to get to I want to keep us on time as well and get to the questions that John had sent after the last or during the end of the last meeting. So a couple of pieces in here again, and I also want to scroll through the appendix to give everyone the same idea what's in here. So what have we been doing in the recent past to reduce expenses? So this would be an important thing to mention, even though people are going to get, I'll say, frustrated. They'll say, well, you know, we're doing all these reductions and now we're still in this problem. Yeah, well, yeah, because of the reasons we just mentioned. So the departments have already implemented a variety of efficiency measures, constrained hiring, vacancy freezes, deferred maintenance, renegotiating vendor contracts. If there's specific details in there that we can show, maybe Chaz, if you think it would be helpful, if Charlie can put together maybe some numbers on that, like this, how hard, like we've been working hard, did that hard convert to 100K a year of efficiency measure cost reduction savings, or was it like we're saving $1, $2, $3 million a year that we've been able to reduce expenses, and yet we can't keep up because obviously the wheel's turning faster than we can, you know, run on it because of inflation, the levy, restrictions, and cost going up faster than we can reduce expenses. I get that. We get that. And then and that's actually what I added here at the bottom of this one. Anyway, despite the efforts, structural pressures overwhelm the savings, fixed benefits, contractual obligations, and mandated services. So what efficiencies can we consider to achieve additional savings? So this is something I got from we got from you, Chaz, earlier. Consolidating shared services. Again, we'll may need to build in some details in here about each of these, optimizing our energy usage, reviewing and renegotiating non-labor vendor contracts and procurement policies, so that can save us some money. But even so, in one of the slides, it talks about, in Melissa's slides, estimated about 5 to 7% of operating costs. So it's not enough to close the deficit. There was a slide that mentioned, I pulled it out of that health and retirement benefits are escalating above 5 to 7%. Increased operating and maintenance costs for aging facilities. I think we need to put some meat around that one so people understand, what are we talking, town buildings? Yes, which ones? Is it only schools or is it town buildings as well? Obviously there's a lot of I hear from a lot of people about we're building new schools, so those aren't our aging facilities. Well, we have 1 or 2 older ones, but still, can we get what we need to get out of those to and go after the real old facilities that are costing us a lot of money? And so we should probably list those so people understand which ones we're talking about, so we make it real for people. Aging facilities is just too broad. And then contractual salary increases for staff. There might be also good to I think, I'm not sure I saw it down below. There was some confidential document you sent out, Chaz, at one point that showed the the salaries and the proposed increases for people and stuff like that. You know, that was very helpful. I read through every one of those. But obviously that's not going to be put in this, but if there's some percentages that show what the contract shows where we were, I don't know, 3 years ago, where we are this year, where we're going to be 3 years from now, something like that, that gives people a sense of, with normal, assuming the public agrees they're normal, salary increases for municipal staff. Here's where we are right now, because this is costing, you know, obviously costing a lot of money. It's, what did Janet say? It was like over 80% of the town's budget is the salaries.
Yeah,
So-
but Jesse, I have a lot of that data from Ann. I haven't had
Right.
it. Ann and I have gone back and forth, but I do
Okay.
have that.
Right.
And I
Great.
need to get my head into it, but you know, I got a lot of work I can do on my 2 weeks off.
Okay, great. Okay. And so again, one-time solutions are not going to make this sustainable. On the revenue analysis side, again, this is probably needs to be cleaned up, because this was some summary that John D got last week. It again talks about what the definition of an override, the debt exclusion. We did that already. The links are to the state sites. Alternative revenue sources. You know, we looked at this already upstairs. I think this will be removed. We're going to need an override. Okay. And then benchmarking.
Jesse,
Yes, sir.
one question. I know we're doing a bit of education here, but do we need to mention debt exclusion? Doesn't it confuse the issue somewhat? Or that they're somehow different or better, or, you know, I'm just wondering, since we're not contemplating a debt exclusion, I think, why are we raising it?
Would there be one? Okay, I was going to suggest would it be, I agree with you. Would it be worthwhile in one place only in the document towards the top to say, and if you were thinking about or heard about debt exclusions as a way of saving or something, realize that won't work, because of this is what a debt exclusion is, like something very high level. In fact, Lexington, I think Lexington, when I was on their site earlier this week, they, I think, just did the vote actually a week ago, maybe, or something like that. Yeah. Chaz is
A couple weeks ago.
yeah, a couple weeks ago, but there's no data on their website yet about what they actually, you know, decided. But bless you. But what so they did say there, though, right away for voters, John D, that, you know, here's an override, here's a debt exclusion, here's here's why we need to do this and not do this. So we gave them very high level 2 sentences on each side to explain to them why they needed to vote for the override and not think that this could be done through a debt exclusion.
Well, the
So
importance of talking about a debt exclusion is that's the biggest pressure on their taxes right now, is the amount of debt that has to be serviced. And that's why their taxes are going up, not just to support the operating needs, but all of these things that were approved, all of those buildings that we've put up, and the fire stations and all of that stuff. So it's important for them to understand, because it comes out of their same wallet.
Okay.
But not that that you can propose one instead of the other. They're two very different things. And so I think just putting it wherever we put what I've already written, that
Yeah.
should be sufficient.
Okay, I hear you. That's a good. That's yeah. So okay, I'm just leaving this here as a marker, you know. But I agree with you. It should go in the other part. Thank you, Janet. Yeah. So John, are you okay?
I understand that, but it's still confusing, because it suggests that debt exclusion is better in some way, and the only way in which it is better, of course, is that it goes after 25 years. It goes away, because it's paid down like a mortgage. So, but in practical terms, 25 years to the voter doesn't look. the taxes are increasing, whether they're override or whether they're debt exclusion. It's kind of like it's money coming out of the same well. So I worry that we're sort of as an explainer in an appendix or 2-line throwaway. I understand, but to dwell on it, I would avoid it.
I tend to agree with you there, that we should probably minimize it. And so, Janet, maybe we'll talk about trimming down the debt exclusion section and be really clear.
Well, I have to go back and rewrote it, but
Yeah. Okay.
it's basically to say this is why your taxes have gone up, and not there are alternative ways to fund issues we're dealing with now.
Okay,
So-
all right,
Yeah.
we'll,
We'll take a look at it.
But if we're going to do that, Janet, then we should have a chart which shows debt exclusion versus
I have
override.
asked for that from Lincoln. I think he's working on it.
Oh, okay, great.
Charlie's
Because that
working
would be
on
helpful.
efficiencies and, what's happened to the town side of the budget since COVID. So we're pulling it all together. He's working on the list of what's been added, sort of like the tree canopy thing and what it's turning out to be. So yeah, they're working really hard to get me that. They keep prioritizing stuff for the select board over us. I don't understand why, but I leave that to Charlie to discipline or to Chaz to discipline his staff.
Janet, you may want to also check in with Cliff because he's asking for the same data. So you might be writing the same kind of section in the report. It just might be a good.
I was just going to be putting together a chart that shows how the time. I don't have it from Lincoln. I will let. I thought what Cliff is working on is more how it affects the individual taxpayer, and I'm looking more broadly at this is why tax rates have gone up. It would also be helpful to know for every $1 million of increase, what that means in terms of a percentage of tax increase. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Lincoln.
okay. All right. Okay, great. Yeah, we can reach out to Cliff as well.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that this afternoon.
Yes. Yeah, please bring it up. It's almost for sure I will not be able to make that meeting this afternoon, due to the fact I'll be traveling during the meeting, so. Janet, if you could bring that up for town side, that would be great. All right, anyway, all right, we talked about these three. Yeah, benchmarking. I don't have the information in this document yet. It's possible some of it's in the pieces that we've gotten from Chaz in meetings back in October and November. I didn't have time to find it. But overall, again, these numbers came out of, I think, the AI scan or so, or generation that John Doggett did. So our per resident spending on core services within 10 or plus or minus 10 or 15 of peer group median. So we're not far away. We're not like an outlier anywhere.
The problem I have with this, Jet, you're correct. It did come out of the AI
Yeah,
sweep, or what do you like to call it? The problem is there was no backup. So it's kind of like a number without a source.
Yeah, so we're going to need.
But Chaz, where is the document that discusses the survey that we sent out to right at the beginning? Do we have a document? Which I haven't seen it, I don't think. At least
No, I have some data. I have a spreadsheet. I can circulate it to the group.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Because that might help. I mean, that might put some meat on the bones here.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume these numbers, I assume the AI is right.
Yeah.
Maybe it isn't. But
We'll
I was a little concerned because there was no real source to that data.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we'll say there's a startup working its way through Massachusetts now, that's actually doing a lot of deep dive on this, that is trying to put together basically an AI repository of comparative, and it will allow for comparative analysis across municipalities.
Wow.
So we're gonna take a meeting with them and see what we can get. It's still in its infancy, but it's an interesting concept.
Yep. The tool had also basically concluded, after looking at more data than we could read in a year, that in many peer towns, similar pressures lead to overrides, and that allows them to preserve levels and avoid crisis budgeting. Okay, and that this is just a statement that the reserve levels in peer communities tend to be maintained about 3 to 5% of the annual budget, and they have also override stabilization funds. We've talked about that as well. And so it's not due to, our stress is not due to spending, excessive spending, but a pervasive issue. Okay. Okay, this I'm going to leave out, I sort of skip over. Other than, yes, go ahead.
The override stabilization fund concept. I know it's been talked about a little bit, and Chaz has introduced it, I think. I'm a little concerned about it because it might look like to a voter that you're kind of doing two overrides, today's override and tomorrow's override, all in the same override. And what we're concerned, a lot of people are concerned, as the survey showed, about the town's ability to, curb spending and keep control, rightly or wrongly. I mean, I'm not going to comment on that, but I worry that and how is that going to work, and how much is going to be put in? And to me, it needs a lot more fleshing out. And
Right.
I'm worried that it will be used against when it goes out for the vote. It will be used against, because there will be a no on one. I guess if it's going to be one no on one campaign, we've been told.
Mhm. It's a great question. I think the kind of answer here is we're not saying in concrete, we're not saying to voters, this money is just out there in case we need it. It is money that is going to be used in the out years of the override, but putting it aside to be available so the concept here, right, is whereas Brookline has historically phased in its tax overrides over the course of the 3-year cycle, if you instead tax to the maximum levy in year 1, but keep some of that money and don't spend it, so that in years 2 and 3, if there are unexpected expenses, you have that money socked away for it. And then you go back to the community at the end of that 3-year cycle and say, how did we do? Were we able to ensure that services were insulated from pressures? Because what we saw in this previous override cycle was that they weren't, right? Was that we wound up in this difficult situation where every year we had to make cuts, and in the school side quite substantively. But even on the town side too, every year there were cuts being made because there were costs that went over and above. And so we wouldn't be saying to folks, this money is just, here in case we need it. It is going to be spent. It's going to be spent in it's going to be added to ongoing operating expenses in FY 28 and 29. The single biggest one is the fire contract, the tail of the fire contract, which is $900,000. Adding that, having that money available, having 1 year of that money available to cover unexpected expenses in the out years of this override in FY 28 and 29 is going to ensure, is to reassure the public that when this happens, when we get into those years, there aren't going to be cuts to services that people care about. I hear from people this concern, right? Oh, you passed a big override, and then, what happened to those 6 police officers? Why are you holding those positions open? I thought we had a lot of money. Why can't we afford to have a full, complement of police? And, the answer there is the pressures from collective bargaining and healthcare combined to require us to do something to control those costs that we didn't want to do. But if we have those funds available through that override period, what we are talking about is being able to ensure that during this period, we're not cutting services that the voters care about, that we're protecting those services and ensuring that they feel confident that we're not, wasting the money we gave them. So I think that's the kind of explanation, but it's a new concept in Brookline, and it's something that needs to be fleshed out and explained and vetted by this committee. If ultimately this committee feels like that's not a solution that the public is going to accept, then we need to know that so we can tell that to the select board when they make an ultimate determination.
Yeah, I think I was going to say as well, Chaz, that potentially it'll be our job to work on building like a financial plan view that just shows where that money is, how that money is going to be apportioned in the 3 years. It doesn't have to even be called a stabilization fund, and because that gets into the same morass as like free cash. In other words, people think you have the money. Really, from my mind, I wouldn't call it necessarily a stabilization fund, but just show in the budget that the override dollars, X, 0.6 of the override amount will be used in 27, and then 0.2 and 0.2 are used in the next 2 years, and that's it. I mean, it doesn't have to be called the stabilization fund. It just needs to be we're gonna utilize portions of the money over the 3 years, and we just need to show you're already showing projected expenses and projected revenue. So another line in the projected revenue side will be override year one, here it is, override year two, override year three. And I think that, you know, how the town stores those assets over the, you know, to have them available in 28 and 29 is just a regular part of doing administration of your finances.
But
I think that
yeah, the concern I do have, we need to discuss this in the larger committee, obviously, and as to and I think it needs quite some discussion, because my reaction is, well, I frankly, the way it's done in the past, the stabilization fund was in the hands of the voter because the money wasn't called upon until the second or third year. I like that system. It gives a slight cushion, not much, but slight cushion as that, rather than the full whack. And somehow it's being set aside for what use? It sounds like that it's going to get spent out, and then there's going to be more. I just worry that it will be interpreted as two overrides in one, and it becomes a negative. How strong a negative? I don't know.
that's a good
This
point, John.
is
Thank you.
what
Go
it
ahead,
seems to
Janet.
be the way Arlington did it. Is that what and I never understood it, and the many times it was explained, and I think I have a better sense of how numbers work than the average voter. So I agree with John. We've always shown it, or yeah, as the 3 years, how much it's going to be used. If you defer the whack to the pocketbook, I don't know if it's better or worse, because it's going to be a really big whack in year one. But we definitely should talk about it because words matter. I talked to Melissa about in your presentation to the board, the free cash number suddenly went up, and I know why, but that's then a big number of you're not using this now. Why? You have all these funds available. Why don't we use them? Why do we need free cash? Why do we need any sort of reserves? And so the fewer of those targets we give them, the better off we are.
Well, can I jump in? It's John Van Scoik. You know, I can think of a couple reasons to do this, but I'm not sure I'm hearing that those are the reasons that are being given to do this. I mean, one reason would be if we're anticipating that interest rates are going to go up, so we would get a better deal on the borrowing if we do it all at once right away. And the other reason would be we've actually benefited substantially in some recent budgets from interest earned on monies on deposit. And so that would be another reason, is we get to put, you know, money on deposit, and maybe we are doing better with the interest earned on it than the interest we're paying, or at least, you know, we're doing pretty well. So are those reasons why we would do this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, you know, that's a yes and, right? It's
Yeah,
you know, like that money, you know, we earn interest on that money if we don't appropriate it. You know,
yeah.
if we're able to invest it. You know, if that's how the board you know chooses to use it, that's important.
Yeah, Melissa?
Could just add that, you know, it really is kind of, it signals the planning aspect of the funds, and that you have an understanding of like what is still available and when it's going to run out, and what that might mean for when the timing of when your next ask is. So that's Arlington kind of, you know, they show like, okay, we're running out of funds. We need to put something else on the ballot. That's what they've used it for, is to show, so you can clearly see, you know, as the funds are drawn down to support the operating budget, when they might need more relief.
And I agree with John Doggett. I think in this current environment, it's very dangerous because people think you're still coming back to me. You're still coming back to me. Why don't you solve it? And that's a major thing. I don't think we're going to resolve it today, but I think that has to be crystal clear, which is why I'm focusing so much of my energy on how we got here. But I'm not questioning the strategy. I'm just wondering if this is the time to make the change. And that's a discussion for the larger group as we go. It's when will enough be enough is what I hear when we talk to people. I can't do anymore. So, you know, all of that has to be taken into account. Yes, we earn money on it. Interest rates, at least under the current administration, will go down. Just so many unknowns.
Okay, in the interest of time, I think it'd be prudent for us to wrap up soon. So because I and others may have 10 o'clock obligations that are beginning to impinge here. There's a section here on what the override recommendation is, how much, what the first year plan might be, split across public safety, DPW, general government, municipal stuff, and then contingencies, which are like, Janet, what you were talking about, stabilization. New versus level service that needs show what those are going to be. We have some details of that in stuff Jazz has given us that needs to be added in. Community impact we talked about last time. I did add a piece that the town is going to provide. Melissa had pointed out the online override tax calculator tool, supporting our vulnerable populations, a longer term outlook at what has to be done. And again, about this fund, but I think for John D, we could look at not talking about it that way, but just showing our plan of how we're going to allocate the funds. Analyzing, this has to be fixed up again now on the passes partial or passes fully. And here, if it doesn't pass at all. So we'll have to look at this. Like the 18 FTEs I did take from the the override fails, that was in one of Chaz's presentations to us last month. And we don't have the program reduction total. That would be the stuff, Janet, you said you were looking into. And there's more to do in this area. The conclusions or recommendations is a work in progress. Now, there's a list of about 6 or 7 items here. The structural deficit calculations year by year, I think pretty much that has been done. That was the thing I put up on top. I'll have to check together with members of the committee over the next 2 weeks. Well, we're not meeting about what this about these specific details, but that didn't change from the last document. And then in the appendix section, what I did is this has almost all the data from this slide deck that Melissa, Charlie, Lincoln, I think Chaz probably as well, were involved in to produce. And so it goes through it just has all the screenshots and things like that. This is a summary that got generated from the slide deck. When I got the slide deck in a mode that I could use one of the AI tools to actually suck out the stuff that was in the slides, actually. So this comes from there. The primary financial assumptions come from there. This recent financial history I thought was helpful. So I'm going to ask our committee members to take a look at this. There was the budget, which I just was able to screenshot in there. And this goes page by page. So for those of you who've looked at this select board thing or already, there's nothing new here. Just we can use this either as an appendix or a sections right in the document. Here's the free cash section. Again, some of it needs some more deeper work, which maybe I was thinking on the free cash, I'd work with Janet over that, over the next 2 weeks. Again, more and more from the slide deck that was created. And then finally, how to close the deficit. Again, here's the example of the override. Again, this is all in there, and everybody on the committee got a copy. I'm going to send this updated copy to Chaz and his team as well as soon as the call's over. So you'll have the most recent one. They got to figure out a way of how to share it so that we can protect it, as well as have people do, sharing for the team to be able to make changes to the same document. There were potential cuts of 1.4 million. The potential reductions, 18 FTEs. Okay, so these questions, I will have to leave this for the next meeting, or maybe we'll do it privately, in less than an OML amount of people. Were 4 questions that that John sent to me. I added them in here so everybody has a chance to look at them. They're in one place. This was the Collins Center report, and then this is the if you double click it or right click it, and I'll figure out that it works. If we open it, should open up the Excel spreadsheet. That is that shared? You can see it. So this is the spreadsheet that John Dogga put together on single family tax bills, 2 families, 3 families, condos, got it out of the budget book, I think, right? Commercial, commercial tax bills, tax rates, the exemptions. So he did a lot of work here. Thank you. And this goes right through to this year, actually. So that's available to us as well. And it'll require some explanation and narrative around it too, I guess, JD, right? So, but thank you for taking the time to put that together. So, I guess as far as like next steps, Janet has said there were a few things she was going to be looking at, and she's already looking at. I may get with John VS to go over these 4 questions, perhaps early next week if I can. And then the other sections are going to have to reach out to members of our subcommittee to see, you know, what areas you want to focus on over the next 2 weeks, so that we have a document that by like Tuesday-ish, January 6th, can go to Nicole along with the agenda, so that it's available for people to look at in advance. And you know, I think that's as far as I think we can get to right now. I mean, we can have more discussions, but of course, we'll sit here for another hour, and that's not. I know everybody's got things that they have to get to. So, are there any other like final comments anyone wants to make about this? And then I'll entertain you know, any new business, and then a motion to adjourn for today.
Jesse, may I make just one comment?
Of course.
Is it possible for you to just pull up page 22 from what you sent us? 'Cause I think this is
course.
this is key. Yeah, there you
This-
go. That was it.
You want the
Red and
graph?
blue lines. Red and
The
blue
graph.
lines.
You got
Yeah,
it.
there you go. Yeah.
I'll make it
I
bigger.
I find this to be kind of core to our work. And I have a couple of questions, because the numbers of projected annual growth are a little puzzling to me. I think they'd be puzzling to the average person. Like how could we get to 0% increase in revenue, you know, by in a year's time? The key part of my question is, I'm assuming this represents the situation we're in, absent an override. And I think we really have to do the same projection for, you know, if there is the override that we're asking for, what do those lines look like then? Excuse me. And we better hope that the lines converge and show that with the override, we actually have solved the problem for the next 3 years. But you know, I don't have those numbers, and I think we need to take a look at those numbers and figure out if indeed what we're asking people to do is going to accomplish what we say it's going to accomplish.
Okay. I hear you. So, who would be the right people to discuss this with? Is this
Well, I
like,
just think I think it's just a question of asking administrative staff
okay,
to, you know, add another, excuse me, add another chart that incorporates the assumption of an override passing.
Yeah, John, I think we can do that with the town side. I would say that the school side is very much a question mark for us.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah.
So Melissa, these charts are the full town and not just the town
Yep,
side?
they build off the full summary of the forecast. So that first chart, which is all the blizzards of numbers, that it's pulling from that. It's all the same information.
okay, so this is an overall town plus school view?
Yes.
Okay, just so that
Right,
we're,
so that then has to go on hold for the time being.
yeah, that's true. I mean, yes, okay, yeah, thank you, John, for that. Yes, I see
Okay.
what you're saying here. I hadn't really noticed the 0 being here. And yeah, okay, got it. Revenue going down to 0%, yeah. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Okay, more to come then, thank you. So, you know, I really recommend, I'll send out the document to everyone, so that, in some way we're tracking, so that, we, can see what's going on in here and protect it, just in case someone, you know, accidentally leans on the keyboard and hits delete or something. And then, is there any new business? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded by anyone?
Second,
Okay, and John VS,
Aye.
Janet, I don't think Ruth Ellen will be able to attend. I don't see her here. Okay, So happy holidays to everyone, and we'll continue working on
Same
this
to you,
behind the
Jesse.
scene. Thank you, and we will plan to meet at 9 a.m. on January 8th. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah,
for all.
thanks.